You are now entering the horror sanctum.
Hello and welcome back to the Horror Sanctum podcast. I'm Jay with John, Kellen, and TJ. And we are joined today by our buddy, writer, producer, and sometimes actor, Mr. Brad Fowler. Brad, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You may recall Brad is one of the writers of Slotherhouse, which we did an episode on last year. Great episode, great movie. If you haven't seen it yet, go check it out. Go buy some merch. You can find it at Hot Topic now, which is neat. Don't buy any off-brand shit from street vendors. But we're not here to talk about Slotherhouse today. We're here to talk about 2024's The First Omen, directed by Arkasha Stevenson and starring Nell Tiger Free, which is from the Apple show Servant or Servant, which is M. Night Shyamalan. I don't know if anybody's watched that besides me. She's great in that. She's great in this too, but that's later on down the road. So let's get started. But before we do, just know, I didn't say this last movie we did, maybe Abigail or another one, but spoilers. But if you've listened to us before, you should already know we run rampant with spoilers. So let's get it off.
And more spoilers ahead, and I'm going to spoil a whole lot of stuff because I have a whole lot of notes about a movie that we've already seen before, about a nun who goes overseas to Rome and finds out that the Catholic Church is doing some shady stuff behind the scenes. Well, maybe not the whole church, but a good portion of them have decided that it would be good for the church to bring the devil back, which is never a good idea, a completely dumb train of logic. But here we are yet again with priests and nuns trying to bring Satan into the world to push people towards the Catholic Church. Will it succeed? Probably never know. But we get a chance to actually watch how the original Omen all came about, because that's what this is, a prequel to the 1976 Gregory Peck movie, The Omen, where we're first introduced to Damien, our Satan spawn. And this movie tells how he became spawned. So it's not terrible. I'll start there. I'm known for shitting on movies right out the gate.
What?
This is a yeah. I didn't want to like this, and this is actually going to be a very interesting take from me. I hated the first half of this movie. It felt so, to use a word that John used in our group chat earlier, derivative. It felt like this was the same movie that we've seen 100 times. Anytime that you have nuns and the Catholic Church, like even that show that was on Netflix, Warrior Nun, kind of has the same premise where half of them are trying to bring back evil because they've lost their way, or they're trying to help the church in a weird way, and the other half is fighting against them or isn't even aware. So that's all been done. It's all been done to death. We've seen it. We know what's going to happen. But the second half of this movie really picks up and actually becomes very enjoyable. The more the plot actually starts to unfold, it gets to the climax, the things that they've been building to start to happen, makes the film enjoyable. The first half of the movie feels like 2 hours. The last hour of the movie, 45 minutes of the movie, feels like 30 minutes because there's so much going on. There's so much developing. All that to say, this movie suffers from what a lot of movies like this suffer from, where the creative person behind it is in love with their own creation. And so sometimes they hold shots too long, they stay in scenes too long. They want you to pay attention to a visual just a little too long, and that kind of takes you out of the scene. A lot of what worked in the first Omen was the shock value of things that happen. And this tries to play on that with a lot of the kills, a lot of the things that happen. The nun hanging herself mimics the nanny in the Omen hanging herself, says the same line. It's all for you, Damien. It's all for you. The difference is she sets herself on fire.
She burned herself. Who hung herself?
She jumps off the rail. She sets herself on fire, jumps off, and crashes.
She wanted to doubly make sure she was going to be
dead. Double down.
And in the first one, she jumped and she hangs and crashes through a window. That's almost shot for shot the same, other than her being on fire this time, which would probably be the best way to open a pinata, but I digress. The nun scene, like I said, that's an homage to the beginning. or to the first one, the priest dying in the beginning, the one who was the Lannisters' father in Game of Thrones. It kind of mimics what happens to the priest in the first one, where the lightning rod or the pole or whatever comes down and kills him, except this time it's glass, it slits his head. Really cool visual, very creepy way to start the movie. But again, mirrors what happened in the first. The guy getting his head cut off in the original Omen is kind of mimicked when she pulls the guy in half who gets crushed by the car. Vehicles involved in both situations, somebody losing or getting severed in some way. So there's parallels between the original Omen, and I did appreciate that. My problem is
did everybody not think of the movie Signs though, with the guy?
Signs?
Yeah.
When his wife gets pinned to the tree.
Yeah.
No, because Mel Gibson didn't rip her in half and then put half of her body on the ground.
I guess that's true.
He just lost his religion. He went off into a corner somewhere.
But this movie does, and John pointed at it a little bit earlier, the childbirth scene where the devil hand reaches out of the vagina. I feel like now a lot of movies do scenes like that because they're trying to find new inventive ways to gross us out. And I blame the whole torture porn, Saw franchise, that whole genre of movies, the shock value that they feel like they need to put into movies like this. Like, I was rewatching some clips from the original Omen, and the scene where the mother is cleaning or whatever she's doing on the lights. She's by the banister, and Damien, the nanny, lets him out. He hits the table she's standing on. She falls. That's such a beautiful build up to that moment. You know what's going to happen, but it draws it out just enough to get that unease and unrest in you. This one, they just punch you in the face with it. There's no real terrifying build up with the payoff. It's just straight to payoff. This is gore. You're welcome. Oh, shock value. You're welcome. And that's what a lot of movies do these days to try to, I don't know, get a YouTube clip, get a TikTok clip, to get something that people are like, oh my God, you got to see that hand reach out. That's so crazy when the hand reaches out of her vagina. You got to see that. And I find it comical now. Like, I don't find that stuff creepy. I'm looking at it and I'm just like, okay, a hand reached out of the vagina. Is this where we're at now? Is this what we're doing as a movie-going society? I mean, we have the doctor reaching in with his bare hands to pull. If you're that protective over trying to birth the Antichrist, you would probably put on gloves. So why he's reaching in and just pulling the whole fetal sac out of the woman bare hands, which, if you ever watch the X-Files, is one of my biggest complaints about that entire series. One of the best shows on TV. Fox Mulder doesn't put on a glove whether he's picking up a dog turd or a severed head. It doesn't fucking matter. He always goes in bare hand with everything, and every time I'm like, put on a glove, Fox. Oh my!
Sometimes you just got to raw dog it.
Real thing.
He does, and he never gets sick, right? His immune system is immaculate.
Well, it's because he spends so much time in that series running everywhere. He's got the cardio of the Energizer Bunny. But anyway, like I said, I feel like there's parts of this movie that are drawn out. This movie could have been 15, 20 minutes shorter if they just took the scenes. And I'm not saying cut anything out. I think that the movie did a good job of having what needed to be in to tell the story of how Damien came to be. It kind of reminds me of Rogue One, telling the story of how we got to Star Wars Episode 4, how the blueprints got to Princess Leia to begin with. This does a good job of telling you how Damien came to be, because in the movie, he's adopted, and this is where we get to the nun handing Gregory Peck the baby. But it's drawn out in places where it doesn't need to be, and that pulls you out of it. That bores you, and you're not really as invested as you should be in this movie. All that to say, it's a fine movie. It doesn't break any new ground. It's a good. It's a better addition to the Omen series than Exorcist Believer was to The Exorcist. And the biggest thing that I got from all of this is I 100% believe that the church would do something like this because Kenneth Copeland walks the earth and is in this world. So That's my take, Brad. I'd like to hear what you think about the movie.
Well, that's a lot more eloquent than the stuff I'd probably have to say. I mean, for starters, I said the only thing negative with a hand coming out of vagina was that they didn't do it practically. If they'd have done it practically, I think you'd have a bunch of fans sitting here. But I don't know. I was a little weird, when I was like, hey, I'd love to hop on and be a guest on your show. And this was the movie. I was a little bit tripped out because I don't really watch too many of the demon movies. There's something about it, like
I thought you liked the Conjuring movies, though.
No, I do, but they're the ones that scare me the most. They freak me the fuck out. Like my top movie is The Exorcist. I have a hard time with this type of story, like for some reason, like even though like a serial killer and a slasher is actually possible, like I still think, well, I could possibly fight that individual, but I don't think I could fight a spooky ghost, you know what I mean, unless it's like a Scooby-Doo scenario where it ends up being the mayor all along, and then you just go to jail. But yeah, I was a little bit tripped out, but I ended up like, I actually really like you were saying, I really enjoyed it once I got past a lot of the boringness of it was really a slow burn of a movie. But on the other hand, I kind of do appreciate the fact that they did go for some of the slow burn, because I think there was a lot of homages to not only scenes and moments which you pointed out there from the originals, but also in the pace of it. And I thought that was really cool. That I think that was probably done, intentionally. And so I really, I did enjoy it, although I probably would have enjoyed it a lot more at the theater, because at home you get distracted, then you want to jump on your phone and, play Candy Crush or whatever. But the second half was fantastic. First half was good too. It's just in today's world, it was hard to stay into it. I will say, Father Brennan's voice is just heavenly. I mean, that guy's like, wow, it was so fun listening to him speak. So that was fun. I thought it was much better than the Exorcist remake. I thought it was way less cheap than that. I felt like there was a lot more care put into the characters. And as someone that I know, like, it's like not cool to say this, but like jump scares get me every time. Loud noises, they do it for me. So like I like a good jump scare. And I thought the ones in this were very well done and also not super cheap. Like that first one where the second one. The first one was the curtain fluttering and the girl came out of the wall, which that one was slightly predictable. Still got me because I'm a coward. But the other one was when she got pushed into the room and the girl was in the corner, after she had burned, and like you could see.
Oh, that was terrifying, man.
Oh shit! I was like, no. And then she comes out and I'm just like, oh, make it go away. And yeah, I thought it was like really well, like the what they did to her design wise, it was the jump scare was still there. It took a moment to build up, which built up the suspense, and then when we actually got to see the disfigured body creature, whatever you want to call it, I think the payoff was pretty good. It got me well enough I couldn't tell if it was those things on his body were CGI or if it was practical, so I couldn't tell. But if I had to guess, it had a little CGI vibe to it, which I didn't really love. The other thing I really, really liked was when there was the car crash and then she got out of the car and she started breakdancing. Like that shit, that really got me. That was it was unnerving. It just, the way she was moving her body, it was not a contortionist, because we've seen that a million times. She didn't like pop her back around and then finish it with CGI. It was like, as far as I can tell, fully the actress just going there. And it just really was, I thought, really well done and unnerving.
That made me think of Possession.
Yes.
The subway scene or tunnel scene, like that. As soon as that started happening, I'm like, I've seen this before.
Really? Oh, jeez. I don't think it got me. But the last thing I would leave, the only thing that Well, the one thing I really didn't like, and maybe it's because I got a little bit pulled out at times because it was slightly slow in the beginning, was that the second sister, the one that also had the marking on her, like all of a sudden she turned into a good guy, and I'm like, I didn't really see that turn. Like it didn't work for me. It just felt like a little bit out of the blue. As well as the whole, like, I mean, it was pretty obvious that, was it Margaret was, going to be marked from the beginning, even though they tried to do the misdirection. It was, I
And
thought,
not to interrupt, but is
Yeah.
Margaret not the most nunny name that could possibly be for a nun?
perfectly. Exactly. That was, yeah. I mean, so yeah. Anyways, those are kind of my thoughts on it. I did enjoy it enough that I went back and I rewatched the original Omen the next night. Actually, I like the original better, and I hate to sound like that guy, but watching them back to back, I did like it a little bit more. That being said, I think this movie did a pretty freaking good job.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of wild that we in this podcast, like in the span of a month, we watched Immaculate and then we watched this, right? Because the plots are so similar. And I believe they were in the theater at the exact same time for a little bit. And it's just kind of wild how that happens sometimes, how two movies so similar kind of come out. And then this one getting the prestige of, being a prequel to a I don't want to say a tent pole, but I mean it's a tier. That first Omen movie is like an A tier, directed by Richard Donner, uh, pre Superman fame. I mean, that was the movie that gave him his career essentially. And Gregory Peck, I mean, Hollywood royalty of the day. Uh, that first movie still holds up pretty well, I would say. Um, the sequels, not so much, but that's typically the case. I mean, that's certainly the case with the Exorcist films too. I did like this one, as the rest of you guys are saying, better than that last Exorcist movie, which I thought is just unnecessary. Um, just unnecessary, right? Just kind of like having two movies about nuns having the devil's baby or Jesus or whatever you want to call it, is unnecessary. Also, if the Antichrist, here's my question: the Antichrist is supposed to be the devil. Well, who's having sex with all these girls? It seems like the devil. So why did they need? I mean, how they got the devil chained up under this nunnery?
I think Damien is supposed to be like the son of the devil, like Jesus is the son of God, even though they're kind of as one.
It's immaculate.
Yeah, right.
Immaculate.
It's not very immaculate. It's just quite down and dirty in that nunnery basement, whatever it is. It's the convent. Yeah. Anyway, I man, I think it's a coin flip, but for me, between this and Immaculate, I don't like either one more than the other. I like some things that this one does better than the other one. I feel like I'll probably always think of them as sister films. I kind of liked, uh, spoiler alert, Brad, if you didn't watch Immaculate, I kind of liked at the end of Immaculate how seemingly because they were artificially inseminating with what they thought was the blood of Christ, is seemingly that would have been like baby Jesus at the end that they kill, which is like I think a bit more shocking ending than just, oh, well, you just had Damien and they took him, and which has to happen too. That's kind of like the thing about Rogue One, is like you already know the ending, you just don't know how we got there. What I thought was interesting too was though that it seems like they're setting up for another prequel sequel, even though we've already set up the original film. It's like you still got this with the twins and this other girl that's got the mark. What is that?
I'd be shocked if they just don't reboot it and go on with the original remake right after this.
I mean, if this did well at all, I'd almost certainly they're going to follow those characters again, probably, right? I mean, if they can make $1, it's going to happen. Which, I mean, it might be interesting because now now you can actually tell a unique story that's in the same world, and you can pretty much do whatever you want to do with it, which I would actually maybe be more interested in seeing where those characters go. Because we already know what happens with Damien as he gets older and everything, because that whole story has been told. So maybe the Antichrist was actually a girl that was born in the 70s. You know, you never know.
Before you continue, I just looked up the box office. So it made 53 million worldwide of a budget of 30 million.
All right, so that's on the bubble. That could go either way, you know. I mean, I often wonder on these budgets too if they're fully taking in like all the marketing expenses and stuff, because I don't think they do, right, Brad? You'd know more about that than I do.
That's not, and that number is almost always a speculative number from somebody else. If you see that budget somewhere, it's almost never a budget that the studio or the company actually put out, and if it did, it's usually a non-truth.
And there's a major studio picture. There's no telling how many tens of millions of dollars they probably spent on marketing just so anybody even knew about it.
Yeah, typically the rule of thumb is whatever the budget is, that's similar. It's almost the same as the marketing budget's almost the same as the budget of the movie. But
yes, so maybe this breaks even when it goes to streaming or, you know, physical releases, the dwindling physical release.
Well, the international numbers, how well it do, which, who knows?
Yeah, but a possibility. But at this point, if you're not making over 100 million on one of these big studio movies like this, it's, it's questionable if they can get a return and do the sequel business. You know, that's kind of the shitty situation they got into with these Exorcist sequels, right?
Y'all leave The Exorcist alone, for crying out loud. That's the fifth knock on The Exorcist.
$400 million.
Mike Flanagan's in line to direct the next one, so all is going to be well.
I'll be more excited about that one than.
Were you a fan of it? Is that the thing? Are you?
I'm not a fan. I didn't hate it as much as the world seems to hate it.
It was okay. I didn't hate it. It was all right.
But Mike Flanagan's going to fix all that. What's his face is gone, David. Bye, David.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll reserve my judgment for that. Maybe because I do like Mike Flanagan. I think he's done some good stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, everybody's already kind of said everything. Like when I think of this movie, I'll think of that other nun movie that is in the Omen universe that has the hand coming out of the vagina. That's gonna be what I think about when I think about this movie. I mean, that's your money shot scene. That's the one that's gonna stick with you. It's the body horror to the nth degree. That and the birthing sac just kind of being cut open like a baby calf. That was gross. I was eating when I was watching this film. And I was actually eating very syrupy pancakes, watching it in the morning before I went to work. And that was a bad choice. I do regret that. But what do you think, John?
I give this I don't know, a 0 out of 5.
I'm
kidding. No, it was fine. Watching it, my rating probably went up a little bit, just kind of in perspective, given it a couple of days. It's funny. First thing I was going to say is Rogue One, I agree, is a great film. And in fact, I would say it's the best besides Empire Strikes Back. I know that's kind of a crazy thing to say, but
hot take,
would agree.
John.
I would agree.
It's hard to argue against that unless you're one of the people that was really late to what's it, Gen Y or the younger millennials that really hold a special place for 1, 2, and 3 in their hearts.
Yeah,
but as far as quality, Empire Strikes Back and Rogue One are right up. I mean, they're phenomenal storytelling.
Well, hot take for me, if we're going to talk about old Star Wars. I grew up with the original trilogy before Lucas messed them up in 1997 with the CGI. In fact, I still have Blu-ray rips from the original Laserdisc of the original trilogy before he messed it up. But I, as a kid, liked Return of the Jedi more than Empire Strikes Back, even though objectively, Empire Strikes Back is a better film. But I just loved the whole redemption of Darth Vader storyline. That really sung to me as a kid.
Yeah, but as a kid, I liked Attack on Endor better than any of them.
The
Oh,
Ewoks,
the Ewoks.
right?
I was
Yeah.
8. So,
I mean, Jar Jar is the best character they've ever created.
No, but I would say with this movie, I'm actually the opposite of what you guys have said so far. I really like the first half. I thought the opening scene with the preachers, where basically the glass falls and the head thing, and I really enjoyed the first half of this movie. It was a slow burn. It felt more like the 70s. The last half, when it gets in the more horror gimmicky stuff, is actually where I didn't enjoy it as much. And it's weird getting older because sometimes I love horror films. I love all movies, but I sometimes ask myself as I get older, do I like horror films anymore? Because I always get so much more invested in like the drama and the dialogue, and the gore is so second to me. I don't mind it. I just sometimes I'm just like,
Have you
I don't know if-
seen your wall behind you in case you
I
wonder if you
know.
like horror films?
It's such a weird thing. I think it's just getting older and you have a different perspective.
I think it's probably because we're so exposed to it now. Like every horror movie has to have some huge gory moment, or else unless it's an indie film. They almost rely, like I said, on those TikTok clips that they can get. They want something that's going to at least shock people into renting it, buying it, going and buying a ticket.
Yeah.
And we do a horror podcast every week.
Well, it's just like this way. Yeah, it's a weird discussion we should have sometime. But yeah, I think, the gore and the effects in it were really well done. The acting was good. It's very gross. I did not need to see a hand come out of a vagina. I did not need to see the birthing sac get popped like a balloon. I'm good. I watch Grey's Anatomy and I see enough gross shit on that show, so I'm good. But I thought that, it worked. It was kind of slow in parts. I didn't love it. I thought it was way better than Immaculate. I didn't like it as odd as it is to say. I didn't like it as much as The Nun 2. I know that sounds weird, but I cannot stress The Nun 2 is actually like a really good movie. And it sounds stupid saying that, but it's actually way different than the first one. Yeah, I agree with what Brad said. Ralph Ineson, the father Brennan, great voice. I know he's going to be playing Galactus in the Fantastic Four movie. And when I heard his voice, I was like, I could see them doing something with this. Like that's kind of cool. He's got a presence. But yeah, there's a lot of cool scenes, like the lady in the corner where she like sneaks out and like screams, and then I think anytime you cover someone in like a black veil and you do that effect they do, that's always a very scary thing. Of course, they portray the Catholic Church in a bad light in this movie, shocker, but that's pretty easy to do a lot of times in these type of things. I didn't like the scene where the guy gets split in half with the car. I didn't really like that. I thought it was kind of stupid because when you pull him off, you can kind of see his body. It looks like plastic in there. I mean, this is coming from a guy who knows jack shit about makeup effects. So I'm sitting here judging some hard work of some poor guy out of film set. Like, well, it doesn't look real, but just
the whole team, but whatever.
Right, exactly. I'm just shitting
You
all
shoot
over
on
it
like
I
20
know
people
something.
at least.
Literally, I'm like zero artist talent at all. But I thought that effect didn't work as well. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was good, but honestly, the last thing I'll say is just like I don't need to see more. I don't need to see the last Omen. Omen goes to college. How Damien got his groove back.
I would say this is a dumb name for this movie. It should have been the Omen origin or the Omen birth, not the first. The first Omen is the Omen.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I don't need to see any more, but I thought it was okay. I'm curious what Jay thinks.
So I had no interest in this film. Our gal pal Lena watched it, gave it a 4.5 out of 5.
Wow.
And I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, it was really good. She wasn't wrong. I was pleasantly surprised, but part of that surprise was because I went in not having any interest. We know how Damien was born. He was born from someone out of the Catholic Church. Like, we know how that operated. Ralph Ineson was amazing. He always is. The witch, We should do an episode. I think it's in our bucket to pick from eventually. But Tiger Nail Free, is that her full name? Such an odd name. Nail Tiger Free is the main girl, Margaret. Like I said earlier in Servant, she was great. She's not in a lot of stuff, but she was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with Tarantino. She's one of the Manson girls. But I expect her to get some more work following this. I like the opening, the head getting split in half. That was great, even though you knew it was coming. That was one of the other things about this movie. I think it was too long. It was a $1.57, $1.30. Give me a $1.30. So that was a little off, but I love the callbacks to the original film, like Kellen mentioned earlier. But I will say I was kind of surprised how good it was and how much I liked it. I do like it more than Immaculate. I think this is split between John and I and Kellen and TJ on Immaculate, but I couldn't really tell you why. I think Immaculate was like an hour 27, so it was literally 30 minutes shorter. The ending was better in Immaculate, for sure. I also like the Nun 2 better too. Nun 2 was a good movie. We just get jaded because the first one was the first one. But some of that shit's worth checking out again and giving a shot. So
They should have called Nun 2 Back in the Habit after Sister Act.
That'd be funny. That'd be a scary movie ripoff that they'll do eventually. I love the direction and the cinematography. There were a lot of wide shots that pleased my peepers. But yeah, it was just one of those movies I went into with nothing, and I suggested it this week just because it premiered on Hulu. And then Brad was like, I want to come on. I'm like, yeah, ask him if he wants to do this. He's more than welcome. And then here we are. And it is my least favorite subgenre in horror, the baby shit. I hate it. I absolutely hate that genre where it involves demonic babies or unwanted pregnancies. Like, I just can't stand it. Rosemary's Baby is maybe one of the exceptions, which they're making, or they're remaking it, or they're making a sequel to that. They're doing something with that. Just
I think it's a series. It's like a
leave it
series.
alone.
Yeah.
Leave it alone. But yeah, and what's funny, we talked about earlier, you see my hat, 66615. We talked earlier, Kelly mentioned early in the week that, we're recording this on 6/6. Is that a coincidence? Yes, it was. However, 2024, if you take the 2/4, add that's 6. So technically today is 666, and we're recording the first Omen. So it's meant to be. But everything else has been touched on. I didn't hate it by any means. I'm usually not a fan of prequels. They just feel more like money grabs. This one, I don't know why it didn't, but this one didn't feel like a money grab to me. I never saw a lot of advertisements about it. I never saw the trailer playing on TV. It's like they weren't trying to make money. They're trying to not make money. So I don't know, but I went into zero expectations. I enjoyed it. So that's that. So we'll go around, give our rankings, and then we'll close up shop. I went back and forth between 3 and 3.5. I know we all have different things we use in our rating, our grades, and I think I'm going to stick with 3.5. I think it's a good film. It has some rewatchability. It does get a little graphic, but you guys can cover your eyes next time you watch it during those real gross, scary scenes. So I think I settled on a 3.5. Kellen?
Yeah, so like Jay said, I kind of have different criteria, and I'm being, I guess, early on was a little more lenient with the numbers, but 5 scale we talked about. It's real hard to just nail down a movie that's just good. It's not anything special. Is it something I want to revisit? Not really. So in my mind, is this anything a 3 and up? I feel like is something where I wouldn't mind watching again. And it's not that I wouldn't mind watching again the first Omen. I just have zero desire ever to. Is it something that if I'm flipping through the channels and I see it, I'm going to stop on? No. Is the original Omen 100%? The original Omen's on, regardless of what part it is. You stop, even if it's just for 5 minutes to kind of reminisce about how great that movie is. So all that to say, this is, for me, a 2.5. It's a good enough movie to watch, but not in that category of to own, unless I guess it's a steelbook and you're into that, Jay.
Not me. Also, I like I like how you said that you have become more cynical on your rankings, because you have dive bombed on these rankings lately.
I'm looking at it as like, and I'm proud. I'm gonna go through all my movies. I was thinking about it today, and I've got so many movies that I own that I just don't even care to own. So I'm probably going to end up like getting rid of like half the Blu-rays that I own, just because I'm like, I don't really know
Show
that I
us
should
first.
keep
Show us first.
Deal.
All right, show me first, then the rest of them's fine. All right, Brad, what'd you give it?
It's interesting. It's interesting hearing you guys talk about that, because I don't really do a whole lot of movie ranking, although I will argue with people for hours about Star Wars, so I'm happy to do that. But yeah, movie making's so freaking hard. And I will say one thing, I agree with y'all as far as the rewatchability. If I were to give rankings to something, would come into play. However, to be the devil's advocate, I don't think it necessarily applies for certain genres and subgenres. Like a good drama, I usually will never revisit. I'll revisit in conversations and whatnot, but I don't necessarily watch it all over again. Meanwhile, that Vin Diesel movie where he was acting as his own attorney for a while back in the like early 2000s, I've watched that probably 10 times.
That was Sidney, was it Sidney Pollack's last film he directed?
Was it?
I think so.
Yeah, I remember that. I don't remember the name of it though.
I don't either.
Was that one of the last movies where he had hair?
Yeah.
Yeah, he had hair in it, and Peter Dinklage was like the opposing attorney or something like that. And anyways, my point being that some movies I will rewatch a slasher movie a million times, or rewatch a comedy a million times. Something that's stupid brain candy, I'm on board. But something that's a slow burn, specifically from the 70s era, 60s, 70s, slower movies, I'm not necessarily going to revisit it, at least for an extended period of time. And I think I got to give this movie some credit. I don't want to rewatch it. And I think a lot of that has to do with the pace. But I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. So in a roundabout way, it scared me. I'm an easy mark. But I thought it was pretty darn well executed. So I'd give it a 3.5. Yeah.
Find Me Guilty is the name of that movie.
And
yes,
it was Sidney Lumet. And it was Sidney Lumet's next to last film before The Devil Knows You're Dead.
Basically the same thing, right?
Also not as good as Rogue One, but a very good.
All right,
that's
TJ,
a good point you
give
make.
it?
That's a good point you make though about rewatchability on certain things, because M. Night Shyamalan has The Sixth Sense is probably his biggest masterpiece, but I could rewatch. We as a family rewatch Signs every year, and I absolutely love getting spooky season started by watching Signs. Have I watched the Sixth Sense ever again after I watched it twice just to pick up on all the red things, but after that, do I ever care to watch it again? No. Signs is a yearly movie in our house. So
Signs is my favorite alien movie, like hands down.
It's phenomenal.
See, I hate
the best
ending
alien
Signs.
reveal in movie history, in my opinion, as far as just that the acting
Bigfoot
of Joaquin
video.
Phoenix. That's
Agree.
phenomenal.
Agree. On our way to Gatlinburg this past weekend, I was just overlooking, and there was a huge field, no houses, nothing around, but there were two giant circles flattened down, like the crops flattened. And I was like, I'm gonna go watch Signs tonight. All right, TJ.
Well, like I kind of alluded to, I can't really split a hair's difference between what I thought of Immaculate and what I thought of this. I like certain aspects of both. I do think this one, like other people said, was slower moving. I think, like Jay, it could have easily been 30 minutes less and maybe would have more impact. Maybe there'd be more of that rewatchability factor for me. So I'm going to give it the same rating I gave Immaculate, which is 3 out of 5.
All right, John, bring it home.
Yeah, so interesting. You're talking about Signs. I like a lot of this. I listen probably to scores and soundtracks a lot, and it's probably creepy how often I have the Signs CD in my truck listening to it randomly when I shouldn't be.
Yeah, that's
like at
it's not, I don't know
lunch.
if creepy. It's just kind of weird.
It's
just
weird, right? Hey, people listen to music and you're like, why are you listening to James Newton Howard? But yeah, I think this movie, it looked like the 70s. It's an odd movie. It's very strange. Like at the scene where she she's about to birth. I noticed she's like barking, and I see why she was doing it, but it was like kind of an interesting choice. The one other thing I was going to say is the Margaret, the main girl. I know this is not true, but for some reason I kept seeing this. Her hair, at first it looked like a wig, but it wasn't a wig. It was just the way her hair was like fixed in a ponytail, and it's not her natural color. I was just kind of like, did they put a fucking wig on her? But it wasn't. It was something like playing tricks on my head. But that being said, yeah, it's I was a 2.5, but I'm gonna say 3 out of 5. I think it was, looking back, I think it's fair 3 out of 5.
So what's the problem if she had a wig on? Why did that infuriate you so much?
I didn't infuriate
John
me.
hates bald people. Sorry,
No.
TJ.
I just was thinking like,
You wouldn't be the first.
I was just looking at her and I was like, wait a minute, she's got good hair. Why would they? It was confusing. Right?
He only buys Fabuloso. He refuses to buy Mr. Clean.
That way, I think they want her hair to be dark. It kind of goes with everything in the feel. And that one scene where she's laying down and it's like an octopus, like she laid down on an octopus, like there or like 10 octopuses. Like there's just so much hair. So that brings us to a 3.1, which is a 3. So 2024's The First Omen, 3 out of 5. All right, so that's it for this episode. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, subscribe to our YouTube channel, or to wherever you're listening to this podcast. Join the church horror. It's not even the church anymore. Look at me. I went back a year and a half. Joined the Horror Sanctum over on Facebook. Keep up with everything. And we have a TikTok also. MySpace and LinkedIn coming soon. So, Brad, thank you for joining us again. Next time we'll let you pick the flick. And you want to tell everybody where they can find some sweet ass Slotherhouse merch, stream it, all that fun stuff.
Go to slotherhouse.com or head to a local Hot Topic store and get yourself some stuff. But I appreciate you guys. It's always fun chatting with you.
Yeah, we appreciate you. We appreciate the movie. I live beside Opry Mills. They have it at this Hot Topic. They have the Slotherhouse shirts. So go buy that. Go watch the movie if you haven't already, but you should already have because you listen to us. So before we sign off, we've been talking in our group chat how we first started this, and it's changed. It's evolved. It's bigger than we thought it would be at this point. And originally we said, let's make a bucket, which I'll show you, but you can't tell because it's green. I have a green screen. But we all wrote down, 20 movies? I folded them up, typed them out, put them in this bucket, and that's how we were picking movies for a while. And we got away from that big time. So like we've been keep saying like we need to get back to that. We need to get back to that. We don't know what's in it anymore. Like it'll be fun, get back to our roots. So we're going to start doing that a little bit more with movies. We've been trying to do a lot of the newer ones too, to keep everyone engaged. But sometimes these older flicks do a lot better than those new ones. So looking at you, Immaculate. But with that being said, I'm going to reach in and pick our next movie. And it's actually going to come out after this episode. So I think this comes out the 24th. This will be July 1st.
I thought you already said we're doing Deep Red.
I was doing a bit, you dumb son of a bitch.
Wow.
It's Deep Red, everybody.
People,
Deep
John.
fucking red.
I thought you were redoing it. I was like,
John's
I reached
hatred is
in
based in
and-
reality.
Sorry, guys. Sorry. I reached in a few days ago and got Deep Red.
You were
So-
confusing me.
That
You
was
dumb
like
bald whore.
that was like a Tim Robinson skit on I Think You Should Leave. Like that.
I love the fact that he waited right up until the minute that Jay pulled the slip over
almost
to
done.
ruin the entire
I was
sketch.
almost done. Oh, you're welcome, everybody. Anyways,
Yeah, I'm good
July
at ruining
1st,
things.
Deep Red, White, and Blue, week of 4th of July. Kellen watched it for the first time this week.
I haven't finished it because I got the worst possible version of that movie to watch, thanks to Screambox, which had half Italian, half English dub, where they would in the middle of scenes they swap between Italian and English.
Whoever
And
was
it
dubbing
made
was
no
smoking
sense.
pot, and they just forgot what they were doing. Took a
It was,
nap.
it was the
Oh, shit.
weirdest. And I was asking in the group chat, I was like, so what point do they just do English? Because I'm so lost right now. And John said, what the hell version of this movie are you watching? And I had to send a clip so that they could see that, look, this woman is literally speaking English. And then in the same scene, she's like,
I thought you were being facetious.
You're
Like,
I
I
was
thought
having
you
a
were watching
stroke.
the
On.
Italian version and wondering when they were going to start speaking.
Yeah, it was like when Daria Nicoletti, who was Argento's wife, was talking. I noticed that she would speak Italian, and I was like, I don't remember that. So it must have been some weird edit. It was odd.
But John gave me a tip to watch it on Pluto, and it's been better since. So I'm about 20 minutes into it.
So our second Argento film, we did Bird with the Crystal Plumage. I'll spoil it for you now. This is my favorite Argento film. So we'll see you next week for that. All right, sign off. I'm Jay with Brad, John, Kellen, and TJ. And until next time,
Keep it spooky.
I only heard poopy.
It sounded like you said Pookie.
Poopy.
Well, let me say it again.
No, you
Keep it spooky.
You're ruining everything tonight. You're ruining everything.
That was like one of the
You
funniest
sound
things
like
we've
my
ever
wife.
done on the show. Legit. Deep red.
Kellen's done that once.
Shit.
Kellen did it once, but in my
I
defense,
thought
I
you
should
were
have told you
throwing me
guys.
for
I
a
just
loop,
kind of
and I
thought
was
about
already
it with the
planning on
bucket.
watching it again.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, I won't go off script anymore.
It happens. Well, at least read me
Oh,
in.
man.
We're going to
We have a
we're going
script.
to do a first ever.
I do.
I've
I
never
type
had a
everything.
script. The only thing I wrote a script for was for that guy that never showed up. What was his name?
Bose Vincent. Look
Bose
at you,
Vincent.
motherfucker. We know you're listening.
He's not listening. He doesn't know what a podcast is.
He doesn't. He can't get it on his AM radio. wherever he's at.
I had 2 pages of notes for that interview, though.
I think I had 4, honestly, because I watched a lot of his films leading up to that, and they're all shit. I
But
was
he
gonna
did
be
talk
nice.
to me on the telephone and tell me
Yeah.
how shitty of a screenwriter I was and how I would never make it for an hour. So that was something.
Which is very, very common of Nordic people. They're known for being terrible.
I'm going to
terrible
send him
to
the
other
clip of
people.
you ruining my skit and see if he still agrees with his assessment.